You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Counterflow Podcast. I gotta admit, this topic is slightly frightening to me, and it's maybe not the topic per se, but the information that my guest, Aman Jabbi, is going to provide you, the glimpse into this digital existence that he does indeed believe we have coming our way very quickly. As you're about to find out, he knows a lot about it, and so that's why I had him on. My friend Alex, who's been on the show before, said to me, you need to get Aman on, and then kept telling Aman, you need to go on Counterflow. We've been able to merge our worlds now, and I've got him here today. He's a native of India and an engineer who worked in Silicon Valley for 25 years, a co-inventor of 2 cell phone camera apps. And we get into the cameras, the tracking, the tracing, the geo-fence. Do you guys know what that is? Well, it can be imposed upon a certain area, and then you will be disallowed to exit the geo-fence, so to speak. So we get into all of that. Does that not sound cheerful? Let's get him on right now. Aman Jabbi, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Thank you, Buck, for having me. I appreciate it. I'm doing well.
I'm glad to have you, but I have to admit, the topic that we're getting into here and the extent of how much you know about this stuff and what my audience is about to hear is kind of frightening. So, we just got to tell it like it is. Since you've not been on before, I'll let you give an intro, anything you find pertinent for my audience to know about who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into this.
I originally came from India. I grew up in India. I came here in my early 20s. When I was 22 years old, I've been here a little over 34 years in the United States. I'm a lover of liberty and freedom and have been since I was a child. I used to read a lot, and I recognized things that most other kids would not about freedom and liberty. And I came to the US seeking that. And when I came in 1988, I realized really quickly that there is no freedom or liberty in this country, and it's all propaganda. But I plowed on. I got into the technology sector. I have graduate degrees in chemistry, electrical engineering, and I also did grad school in computer science. I studied at Penn State and at Stanford. My professional background is pertinent to the topics that I generally speak on. So I spent over 25 years in Silicon Valley. I've had a career of almost 30 years in tech. My focus has been on video and imaging technologies. And in the last 18 years, I was specifically into mobile imaging and, built image sensors and cameras for the mobile imaging market for cell phones. So I have deep expertise in cameras. And I also co-founded 2 camera startup companies. And so what I noticed over the years was, while many of us were working on consumer electronics for entertainment and other aspects of like video games or animation computers and stuff, the tech was taken by Big Brother, and Big Brother can be interpreted in many ways. And it's now being used for nefarious purposes, including surveillance and data collection. And when COVID hit, I saw how the LED lights and cameras were going up in San Francisco, where I was, till mid-2020. And I quickly connected all the dots, what the plans were with Agenda 2030, the 4th Industrial Revolution and smart cities, and the entire lockdown agenda, which is connected to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And that's when I knew that if I continue to work in big tech, I'm just building my own digital prison. And so I quit working 2.5 years ago and I fled San Francisco in California. They were destroying the beautiful city of San Francisco, and I found Montana. So I've been here for 2.5 years, and I've been trying to raise awareness here and beyond. And so I got connected to you recently by a common friend. So that's my kind of story in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more stuff I can talk about, but I think pertinent to this particular discussion, that's my background.
I guess there's a few things you said there that I think kind of tie in together. Smart cities, and then this digital, it's basically a digital existence that many of us, or you think most of us, are going to be forced into in some manner. Is that correct?
That's right. So I think I can try and connect it's the digital existence. Let me explain to you what the agendas are at a high level, where they are coming from, and how they are going to be implemented so that people can then understand and connect the dots for themselves.
Got it.
It's a fairly complex issue, but I'll try and break it down. And if you think you need more explanation, I'll be happy to go into a deep dive.
Okay.
So people are aware of the United Nations. Some people may be aware of a World Economic Forum, or WEF. I think most people are aware of the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF. Most people in the world think that these are, cute organizations that have been voluntarily built up for world peace and the betterment of the world. And that's how they sell themselves. However, they are all private corporations. And behind them are the most powerful international bankers in the world. So they control the narrative that comes from these organizations. And at the heart of this, some people might have heard the word, the New World Order, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Great Reset, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21. They're all kind of one and the same in one version or another. It's been getting more and more refined. So the United Nations is running, they have a charter called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals for climate action and for a green Earth. In 1992, there was an Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where over 170 countries signed a pact for climate action. And that was called Agenda 21, or Agenda for the 21st Century. That became Agenda 2030, where they said by 2030, we're going to put all the pieces in place. And their goal is by 2050 to have a net zero carbon. So I'm just giving you the macros and behind the scenes, what they are using to push this agenda. And then I'll show you how it's actually being implemented through smart cities and a digital ID.
Got it.
So I'm not going to go through all the sustainable development goals, but it's about, trying to make like zero hunger, no poverty. It's all about cute phrases like that, but it's all inversion in language. And if people are not aware, please go to the United Nations website, read for yourself what this is all about. And the language is all inverted.
Yes.
So when they say no poverty, they want to make everyone poor. When they say zero hunger, they want to remove natural food and natural agriculture from the earth and feed us with synthetic foods and with vertical farming and so on and so forth. Their goal is by 2030 or 35, there will be no beef consumption in the world, things like that. So I would recommend people study up. Okay, now with the Sustainable Development Goals, I'm going to go into a little bit of a historical context so that people understand how these things are implemented. So the United States Constitution, and most likely all of the constitutions in every country in the world, the United States Constitution has a supremacy clause. And that's Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution. And the supremacy clause basically says that whenever a treaty is signed, this was back in 1787 Philadelphia Convention, then or any time in the future, treaties become the supreme law of the land. So that means if a treaty is signed with a private corporation like the United Nations or the WHO, that trumps everything else in the Constitution. And so people should be aware that currently the WHO is working on a global pandemic treaty with the United States. If that goes through, the WHO will override all sovereignty of the United States of America by virtue of the Constitution itself.
Yeah.
So, with the Sustainable Development Goals, since the treaty has been signed, the federal government is now implementing through the states and through private corporations this Sustainable Development Goals. They want to implement smart cities, which is another term for open air concentration camps or human containment zones, where they are implementing LED lights, 5G microwave towers, cameras, radars, and all sorts of sensors that are being put up in the name of sustainability, energy efficiencies, and to make the cities efficient in every which way. So it's good for climate change and climate action. But really, what they're building is a concentration camp where data is being collected on every human being, on every object, on every car, on every tree, on everything all the time. So it's like an all-seeing eye looking at all activity on Earth. Now, how do they collect data on you? Through your face, because your face is unique, and your face through facial recognition technologies is going to be mapped on something called the digital identity or the digital ID. And that digital ID is also coming from the World Economic Forum, where everybody in the world is going to have a digital ID. Everybody is going to be monitored. They're going to be measured. They're going to be analyzed. They're going to be managed and controlled, and they're going to be monetized. And this digital ID on the other side is going to be connected to a new type of digital currency, which is known as the central banking digital currency, or the CBDC. And your CBDC is going to be linked to your carbon credits, your social credits, like they already have in China, and your vaccination and booster status, so your medical status. So this new digital currency is going to be a currency of control or a currency of compliance. The currency we currently have, which is the US dollar, is a fiat currency. It's a debt slavery-based system, which is being crashed right now. It's in the progress of being completely crashed. And over the coming quarters, the US dollar is likely to go to a zero value. And as it keeps going down to zero value asymptotically, they're going to keep introducing the CBDC in one form or another. So your carbon credits are already being tracked and scored. Your social credits are already being tracked and scored. They just haven't told you. They haven't given you an app yet. So that's how the whole smart cities needs data. Your data is connected to your digital ID and your face to a digital currency, which is a currency of control. And so as you give up more and more data to artificial intelligence, there's going to be more and more control through your central banking digital currency and your digital ID. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, then obviously there's, and this is something that a lot of us in my circles have feared, is that we can essentially be shut down by, in a digital existence, they can shut you down as far as where you go. If they don't like your social credit score, and a lot of people are using the term ESG in that manner, if they don't like it, they can shut you down and you can't bank anywhere, you can't buy anything. They can track how much, let's say, if they're trying to only allow a certain amount of food for each person. Well, once you go over that, then they can shut you off from buying. Is this all correct?
Absolutely. It's a concept called geo-fencing. So think about it as an invisible fence beyond which you cannot travel or beyond which you cannot go. So the concept of digitalization and the digital transformation is really about conditional access. So everything's about conditions. They have a term called zero trust. So once you get into this digital currency world, right, the CBDC, there's a concept called zero trust, where every citizen of the United States by default is a criminal and you're an enemy of the state. And we don't trust you. So for everything you need to do, whether you want to buy beef, you want to buy orange juice, You want to switch on your car and travel somewhere. You want to access your internet. You want to access your bank account, whatever, your benefits. We don't trust you, and you have to keep proving to us that you are you and you've behaved yourself through your central banking digital currency, which has all your social credits and your carbon credits and your boosters. So your currency of compliance will be implemented through this cybersecurity protocol called Zero Trust.
Well, this
So
is
people should be aware about
right.
this digital transformation. It sounds really cute, but it's all about implementing a zero trust world where they can think of it as an inverted prison, like an inverted prison. In a regular prison, you are inside a cage.
Yeah.
And to get out, somebody has to unlock that cage. Over here, you're in an open air prison where everything is in a cage. All your access is in a cage. And you have to keep unlocking each cage to access something, including meeting another human being eventually, or talking to another human being. To buy something, to walk to a park, you'll need permission.
It does seem to me, I can see, unfortunately, the last few years have opened my eyes to some of this. I can see a lot of people just kind of wanting some of this almost in kind of a perverse way. The simplicity of, I can just go to the store in my electric car and swipe my little card, and I don't need that much meat. And it almost feels like they could play on our lust for comfort and ease. So in other words, some of this can be done through seduction rather than strictly coercion, like it would have been in the Soviet Union or something like that. Do you see that?
That's very well said. And I do see that. I have observed it when I was in San Francisco. And in fact, if you see one of my presentations, I think one of my first slides, I talk about the carrots and the sticks, right? So they've given us all this very convenient and cool technology over the last 3 decades. Subsidized computers and cell phones, the ability to not own a car in San Francisco and New York, where you just take an app and you order an Uber, and conveniently within 2 minutes, you can basically get a cab at the, press of a couple of things on your phone. You don't have to even book hotels now. You can go to Airbnb. So all these cool technologies have come, and it's seduced us, as you say, and made it really easy through this digital world with apps and phones and the internet. And there is something to be said about the convenience of using these kinds of technologies. There's something to be said about not having the burden to own a car and pay expensive parking in big cities and insurance. However, it takes away the choice eventually. When automobile ownership is eradicated, and the only choice you have is an Uber or an autonomous driving Uber, you would be geo-fenced, because if you haven't behaved yourself or are speaking against Big Brother, that automobile won't come. You see?
Right.
Or if you're rich enough to own an electric car, that car won't start.
Right.
Or it'll say, I'm not going to, for the next 72 hours, there is no green energy available in your area, so we're not going to even charge your car. So you're going to be geo-fenced in so many different ways. You can be geo-fenced through your digital currency, because if they announce a new pandemic, and say everybody has to stay within 1 mile of your house, your currency won't work beyond 1 mile, your digital currency. So you're very right. Especially the younger generation in their 20s and 30s, they don't have the concept of freedom where my generation or older generations have seen. And they are perfectly fine being within the confines of a technocratic system.
Yeah.
They just don't realize that the technocratic system is going to result in techno-fascism.
Right. Yeah. They're being, it's just a little piece here and there at a time. But I still, over the last few years, I saw people kind of wanting to be locked down and wanting to not have to go to work and things like that. It was disturbing. And speaking of the certain distance from your house, some friends of mine outside of London, they said that was actually the rule at some point during 2020 for them, that they could only leave and go within 5 miles of their home or something like that. And of course I thought, how on earth would anyone enforce that? And they said, well, it's just that, if you get pulled over by a cop or something and you're too far, then you get some kind of citation. But with the technology you're talking about, there's no need for the cop. You just won't be able to go
There is absolutely no need for the cops. Yeah. And that is what the smart cities are going to be. And people are talking about 15-minute cities and 20-minute neighborhoods. There's talk about that going up everywhere in the world. And it's just a red herring because they don't need policy from local governments or, city governments to enforce that. They just have drones as the aerial police,
Yeah.
the LED lights and cameras, and your CBDC can be turned off. So the smart cities are essentially weaponized. While they are being sold to us as data collection devices for climate action and sustainability, they're really weaponized systems.
The push for smart cities, is this basically in every state now?
It's in every state, every country in the world. And if you're in the country, you might not see it, but in all the cities, they're coming up in one way or another. So people need to be observant, start seeing as the cameras are going up, start seeing the LED lights going up, and the radars and all sorts of microwave towers, because it's one big system tied together.
Okay.
And the smart city infrastructure is the only place we can have resistance at a local level.
Ah, okay.
And that's where the resistance needs to be, is to undo the smart cities. Because that's what is going to be building your concentration camp. And so my recommendation is educate yourself. And if people haven't seen my presentation or videos, I have a YouTube channel. They can go and see my live presentation with slides. I have one of the videos there. And educate yourselves on what's happening. And then, raise awareness locally and get hundreds and thousands of people together and start a movement to undo all the smart city infrastructure. Because I have to say one thing. One thing. The entire smart city infrastructure of cameras, radars, sensors, microwave towers, and LED lights and smart poles, they are weapons of foreign invaders. They are being installed by the international bankers through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The public has not asked for these. We were never consulted, and they're being put up on our land without our permission. So, if people saw 1,000 Chinese soldiers standing in their city every day with weapons, would you do something about it?
Right.
But now you have 1,000 smart lights and smart poles and infrastructure from the United Nations, which have 100 times the potency of any Chinese soldier. And they are on your land. What are you going to do about it?
Maybe I need to open my eyes more and look around more. I do live in a small town, but I'm trying to think. I don't know that I've seen these LED lights and things of that nature. Are these going up in big cities? What would I look for to even see this?
They are tall lights, and then they kind of come over, and they're extremely bright. If you look at them, you cannot keep your eyes looking at them for more than a second or even half a second.
Okay.
So they are very bright. They're usually 20 to 30 yards apart, and they are basically forming. It's basically the thing. It's the all-seeing eye. Essentially, they're providing all the light at night for cameras to see.
Oh, okay.
You see, so basically, AI or the beast system is being designed so that we can watch you all the time, and we can watch you everywhere you are. And if you remember, I'll be watching you. The police song is really about. It's about this beast system. It's the all-seeing eye.
Okay. You're referring to it as a beast system?
I call it the beast system because I feel that artificial intelligence is the beast, and the beast needs food, and the food is data. And the smart city infrastructure is what is collecting the data. And I have friends who are Christians here in Montana, and they said, dude, it's all written in the Revelation, what you're talking about. And so I kind of connected, it was a parallel. I came to these conclusions just through intellectually and through my work in Silicon Valley.
Do you see at all a spiritual or demonic quality to some of this?
Completely.
Okay.
Because I say at the highest sense, there are many wars being fought, right? There's a war on our planet. They're destroying the planet. They're going to be destroying agriculture and food as we know it. It's a war on the financial system. They're going to crash the last 1% of the US dollar. 99% of it has already been crashed since the formation of the Federal Reserve Bank. They're going for the last 1%. But at the highest level, it is a war on the human spirit, right? They're basically making the human being into a slave if the system is successfully enacted, and it's going to be. The question is, how many of us are going to resist it and stay out of it? The majority of the people are going into the system. So it's a war on the human spirit, which makes it a spiritual war, right? And the darkness and the evil behind it, it is so humongous. Like, why would you want to enslave humanity and take away their soul? This is data harvesting really becomes your soul harvesting.
Yeah.
If you're harvesting human souls. And if people want to go into further levels of the dark agenda, this is a bio-digital convergence where through various injections and all, they may be putting nanotech. There's a transhumanism agenda. And so people can do their research. I don't want to go too deep into it. Since we have limited time.
Yeah. What component, let's see, where does AI come into this now?
Yeah. Okay. So remember I talked to you about the digital transformation? So the digital transformation basically has 5 pillars. There are 5 pillars to the digital transformation. The first is the Internet of Things, which is the IoT. That's the cameras and all the nodes at the end of a network, right? So everything that has a digital ID, data is being collected through sensors. That's the first pillar, which is required. The second is the data goes through the network and goes into the cloud. So the cloud is basically servers that collects the data. That's the second pillar of the digital transformation. Then artificial intelligence is basically software that is designed intelligently to scan that data and find interesting things inside that data and make connections and understand everything about everybody and the world and about all the data in there. That's where, so AI is the third pillar of the digital transformation. And it's the most important pillar in a sense, because it's what will then make sense of the data, and then it writes all the key important pieces of the data onto something called a blockchain, which is a digital ledger. So blockchain is the fourth pillar of the transformation. And then finally, cybersecurity, which is basically implements the zero trust. They are the prison guards of the inverted prism. So cybersecurity is the fifth pillar. And that's where AI comes in. AI is the central and most important piece. And what is important to understand is, out of the 5 pillars, we as human beings, we have no control over the second, third, fourth, and fifth pillar. Because the cloud is controlled by Amazon and Google, right? AI is controlled by artificial intelligence algorithms run by private companies. Blockchain is also in the cloud, owned by private companies. And cybersecurity protocols and software is also owned by private companies. Where can we fight this resistance of the digital transformation, which is being used to enslave us, is the IoT and the sensors and the smart city infrastructure hardware that can be undone. It's the only thing we can see, touch. It has been installed through lies and deceit. It can be uninstalled by the people. It must be.
Do you think some of the people at a local level, let's say just in Austin, Texas, that are helping install some of these smart city devices and throughout the city, do they understand the extent of the damage that can be done with this, or are they just workers?
Most of them don't understand it. I think almost nobody does. I've been chasing down, local politicians, city council, county commissioners, mayors, sheriffs. I've spoken to pretty much the whole gamut of politicians in Montana and locally in Flathead and Lake County. Most of them don't understand it. Some of them who understand it a little bit, they don't address it. Or either they are scared or they've been given gag orders because they've all accepted money, right? At a county level and a state level, they've accepted federal money. And when you take federal money or federal grants, they're effectively bribes because you sign paperwork and documentation, and that chance, those will have gag orders or non-disclosure agreements.
Yes. Yeah.
So people need to first get educated and then call out everybody, locally, and put pressure on them.
One of the things people always ask people like yourself that know a lot of the ins and outs of the technology. You said you worked on cameras and things like that. I guess we kind of know this by now, but is my phone recording me? Is the voice function on? Is my voice being recorded throughout the day? Are my movements being tracked? Is my computer, this little camera that's looking at me right now, obviously it's recording this, but is it recording us throughout the day? Explain that type of thing.
So it's probably not recording as in a traditional recording, but your data is being collected. So your microphone is on, some of your apps are listening in and they are analyzing what you're saying and picking out the right words and then sending it to the cloud. So your entire stream of audio and video is not being recorded, but it is being analyzed and monitored. And then the relevant pieces are being recorded. So for instance, right now, AI could be getting that you're talking to me and we talked for 1 hour and you blinked 88 times within 1 hour, things like that. You looked sad 20% of the time, you smiled 18 times. So all the relevant data is going up to understand Buck and Buck's behavior during that 1 hour call, making associations with the words I spoke, which made you stressed, and what words I spoke, which made you smile. So all that is being analyzed and recorded at some point. And as the AI algorithms get smarter and smarter, there will be more knowledge about you and your behavior. So we are going to actually transition from smart cities to cognitive cities. Right now, we are in 5G infrastructure. Tomorrow, when we get 6G and we go to 100 gigahertz to the terahertz frequencies, smart cities will become cognitive cities. They will already know your next move.
No.
The cities will already know your next move. The network will be a sensor. And this will be the biodigital convergence where your biology will be merged with the smart cities, essentially.
That's when you're getting into transhumanism at this point.
That's right. So like today we have predictive analytics. Tomorrow we have prescription analytics, where you'll be nudged along to behave in a certain way in order to achieve a certain end for AI.
Wow. Let's talk also quickly here about ESG. My audience, most of them know what that is. And I think, from what I know, Bank of America and some of these banks are already using that. But explain kind of how that's going to fit in that puzzle piece fits in here and what that represents for us.
Excellent question. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it is directly tied into the same United States Sustainable Development Goals. Today it's already too late, but traditionally, when you're a public company traded on Wall Street, your stock price is a function of your revenues, profits, how you're doing, and then what the analysts predict how your company is going to do in the future, based on the value that you create. ESG is a system which is now going to be a major component of how your stock is going to be ranked. So there's an ESG score to your company, and it's going to play a major part in your stock price. So that's one thing to know. So each company will be then, in order to get their ESG price up, they are then compelled to make sure that they are environmentally friendly in the way they do their work, in the way they produce value, in the way they what types of suppliers and customers they have. If their suppliers are not green and have an environmentally high score, then your ESG score will go down. They will be compelling their employees to be green. So if you drive a car 30 miles, 45 minutes to work, your ESG score will go down and your bonuses will go down. And in turn, the company's score will go down. So the companies are going to use the ESG formula to enforce behavior on their employees. And if the employees want to keep their jobs, they will be essentially forced to comply in a certain way. If I'm a supplier and I say, I don't care about ESG, I'm just going to do whatever I want, then companies will not take product from me because their ESG score will be going down. Now, talking about the S is the social aspect. They have another thing inside companies called the DEI report, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusivity.
Right.
So think about all the narratives in the last several years that have been pushed onto society. Black Lives Matter, trans, right? Prison justice reform, and all those mumbo jumbo words. There's a reason for it. This is for DEI. So now if I'm running a company and my board is, 6 white men, my ESG score is going to be pretty low. But now if I put a black man and replace one of the white men with a black man, my ESG score goes up. Imagine if I now replace one other white man with a black woman, I get a higher ESG score. Better yet, a black trans woman from Africa, I get a super high ESG score.
Yeah.
So this is all about controlling people through corporations. So and the G is corporate governance. What departments you have in place in your company in order to enforce the E and S components. So there's a term I'm going to introduce, which most people may not have heard of, is communitarianism. And so ESG is a form of enforcing communitarianism at a corporate level. And I think it may be worth spending a minute on what is communitarianism.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is the new system that's eventually coming. We can call it technocracy, fascism, or techno-fascism, or totalitarianism, but it's really communitarianism is the system that's coming. There's going to be no government that's going to use police to enforce what they want us to do. Communitarianism is effectively a snitch society. So if you connect the dots, all this ESG is really snitching on each other, right? Effectively. So there's a concept called the Hegelian dialect. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Right? So it's like problem, reaction, solution, or thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Right.
Right. And so what is it they've done in the last 100 plus years? They've had capitalism. Actually, it's really crony capitalism, but they've always pointed a gun on capitalism and how the rich are always screwing up the poor people. And so they've come up with communism, which is the Marxist theory. So thesis, antithesis, and a predetermined solution will be communitarianism. So take the worst of communism, take the worst of crony capitalism, and introduce this wonderful system called communitarianism, right? Where everybody is going to be equal. Not equality of opportunity, but equality in terms of results. Right? That's what they want. They want everyone to be equal in results. And so communitarianism is going to become a snitch society through social credits. So if you snitched on me, your social credits go up. You see?
Wow. Yeah. So unfortunately, I do see. Yeah.
So everybody will be then behaving how Big Brother wants you to behave.
Yeah.
And everybody is going to be compliant and a sheep.
We got a taste of that through 2020 and 2021, and people didn't even have this system in place yet. And they still wanted to snitch on people. Hey, this guy across the street's got too many people in his house. They're spreading sickness, things like that. And people were willing to work basically as agents of the state for completely no money.
Exactly. Now imagine if you become richer by snitching through your CBDC. Right. So that time you weren't even getting rich by snitching. So now they'll be more incentivized to snitch. So they get their social credits higher.
Everything you're saying scares me, I have to say. But do you ever talk about this with someone and they just go, "Oh, Aman, you're making a big deal out of this. Things are just going to be easier. Just what if you're unless you're a bad person, you should be fine." Things like that. Do you ever hear pushback?
No, either people hear me, understand me, and get scared, or they just look at me like it's like a deer caught in headlights.
Right.
And then they assume that they didn't hear whatever I said. So
Right.
it's more like that. But in Montana, people are more aware here what's going on.
Okay.
And I'm trying to encourage people saying, fear is fine, but ultimately fear is the currency of control.
Yes.
So fear is not the right answer.
Right.
Fear is not the right answer. Educating yourself and empowering yourself with that knowledge, and then raising awareness, and then finding solutions locally. That's
Okay.
the key.
Right.
Because there is a way out. But we need awareness, we need courage, and we need numbers.
So do you think at a local level, politically, this can be solved, even through voting at local level, city council people, mayors, sheriffs?
You're just opening up a new can of worms.
Okay. Oh, we don't have to get too crazy, but it's just because people are going to think, well, my town, I know my sheriff and I feel better about that than say Austin, Texas, where it's lost already. That's a lost cause. I guess I'm looking for hope, at least in small areas at local levels.
Oh, I can give you hope, but at a very high level, without going into deeper rabbit holes, the answer is no. And I'm not saying don't do anything at a local level with your councilmen and sheriffs. You must.
Okay.
You must, and you must do it in numbers, because when you do it in numbers, people will then realize that they have no power and they have no representative government, even locally. But they need to come to that awareness. So then once people find out that they don't have representative government at the city or county level even, what are you going to do about it? That's where you need awareness and numbers locally. Will you locally be courageous enough and intelligent enough and unified enough in numbers to take back your local county, to take back your town? Because if you believe in your sovereignty and you want to live a free life in the future outside the beast system, outside the smart city system, you must find a way to do it. But you can only find a way to do it if you have like-minded people in good numbers in your area where you live.
I heard you say on one of your, a show that I heard you on, something along the lines of how outside of certain big smart cities, there may be little towns. And you said something along the lines of that's where I don't know, like the dissident folks might be, but it's not like they're just going to leave us alone in this small area that's not all wired in smart city wise. Can you get into that?
Sure. I mean, there's a concept called the Wildlands Project.
Yes. Yes.
So I have a couple of maps of the Wildlands Project, which I can share with you later. But it's this whole agenda, this whole green agenda, Agenda 2030, and the Sustainable Development Goals, they want to pack everyone in smart cities, and they are going to be, I think it's 11 zones in America. So like San Francisco Bay Area is one zone. Los Angeles, San Diego, and northern parts of Mexico is another zone, right? This Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, etc. is one zone. So there are going to be 11 zones in North America. And between those zones, there's going to be high-speed rail, and pretty much all of human population will be living in those 11 zones, and the rest will be very limited movement or completely no man's land. So where I live is no man's land.
Okay.
And this is for a greener planet and all that mambo jumbo. So that's their goal in the longer term.
And what happens then I want to live in no man's land. What happens in no man's land once some of this starts occurring?
So now if you have numbers and you don't have the smart city infrastructure, there's going to be problems even in no man's land, because you're not going to be left alone with all the robots. Right? Tomorrow, there's going to be no police in a few years. They're going to remove all of police and defund the police is again a red herring to start reducing police force and defunding them, but not because the police have been bad guys against colored people. It's because it's going to be robotic dogs, aerial autonomous drones, and they show it in movies. And if you go to companies like Skydio and Boston Dynamics and look at the number of robots that they are selling to Department of Homeland Security and beyond.
Yeah. They already have those
in
robot
the hundreds
dogs.
of thousands of years. Yeah, hundreds of. I've seen one of the robot dogs in front of me within a few yards at a venture capital firm many years ago in 2015. So these are real. These are real. So we must. So I think it's important to know if we can undo the smart city infrastructure, AI will not get the data. When AI doesn't get the data, it doesn't have enough knowledge and smarts to give instructions to the autonomous dogs, the robotic dogs or the drones. That is how we weaken the area police force and the robotic police force. And that is why I want to keep coming back to this point in every talk I do. Undo the smart city infrastructure, because that's where it gets its food.
Right. How about avoiding the CBDC?
You get rid of the smart city infrastructure, AI doesn't get the data, it can't score you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Got it?
Right.
And at a personal level, don't sign on to the digital ID. That's really important to understand. So when they come to you and say, for your safety and security, and to get your benefits, your social security, you need a digital ID. And the moment you sign on, you're entering that beast system with the digital ID and all that stuff. So at a personal level, if we have mass awakening and people just say, no, we are not signing on to the digital ID, they can't do much.
Do you sense or predict, I don't want to say predict because that puts pressure on someone. Do you ever think about what could be next as far as, and we got to be careful with some of the language so I don't get kicked again, but what we saw over 2020 and 2021, to me, that was a trial run just to kind of see how people handled lockdowns and whatnot, no matter what the cause was that they were giving you. Do you see another thing coming like that in the next 5 years or so?
Much sooner than that.
Oh,
and it will be, you're right. It was a trial run. I call it a dress rehearsal. Because ultimately the goal is to lock down based on climate change and global warming.
That's what I figured. I was thinking was next as well.
That is really what it's about. Now, whether they do another, pandemic, which they might, they have in 2020, they released a movie called Songbird. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, Songbird. They have COVID-23 in that. So it's the year 2023 and a new COVID variant has happened and everyone is locked down inside their apartments and you can't go out.
Oh,
and
lovely.
So now whether that happens in 2023 or 24, we don't know that. But this is all predictive programming they do. But ultimately, it'll be for climate action because what they are doing through, weather engineering and the narrative on television and schools, everybody believes in the global warming and climate change the way they tell us. And since everybody believes it, everybody will keep going along with their agenda.
Right. Yeah. The public school system has been, unfortunately, what kind of trains a lot of younger people up through the ranks to believe all of this garbage.
Right. Yeah. In fact, everyone should know that all unified school districts in the United States are all private corporations and they have a communist charter.
Oh, well.
So if people are sending their kids or grandkids to public schools, don't expect communists not to come home in the evenings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well put. What resources can people look for, read, go online to learn more about some of the stuff we've been talking about?
So they can follow me on Facebook, is where I kind of spend more time than on other platforms. I also have a YouTube channel. They can search for my name on YouTube. I post on Instagram and Twitter.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So they can follow me. I try to be quite comprehensive uh, in the things that I talk about. Uh,
What's that?
my presentation is on video too.
What's that Twitter handle?
Is no flaps, NOFLAPS, and Instagram is also no flaps,
Got it.
and so is Facebook.
Okay. And on the YouTube page, they can watch your presentation?
Yeah, there's a presentation from October with Maria Z. It's a Z Media in Australia.
Yes.
She's the number one independent journalist in Australia. So that was a fairly comprehensive presentation. My presentation has come a long way since, so I expect to be doing another comprehensive presentation next month.
Excellent. Okay. I want to link to those in the show notes page for this. Any books that
there
talk
are
about
many books to read. There's a really good book I recommend, The Invisible Rainbow. It talks about the electrification of the earth, and so people will get a good sense of different milestones and inflection points in the last century, how the electrification of the earth at different points in time, from radar to television and others, to 4G and 5G, etc., how they affect human health and animal health. And so know what's coming. It's really important. It'll blow your mind. It'll also give you education on what to do at home to minimize the harmful effects of all the electronics we have at home. Another book to read about the financial system, I recommend Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins.
I'm surprised I have not read that one. Cool.
Yeah, it's better than The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Right. Okay.
Give me then you give me 2 seconds. I actually have a slide where I recommend 5 books to start reading.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. The third one I have is War is a Racket.
Yeah. Is that Smedley Butler?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these are various kind of important pillars on what's going on in the world. Another one I recommend everybody read from teenager to adult and read it once a year is called Economics in One Lesson.
Yeah, of course.
By
Sure.
Henry Hazlitt.
Yes.
And there's another one, William Stamper. It's called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree.
Oh, I don't know that one.
And the fifth one I have on my slide deck is The Brief History of the Future by Jacques Attali, Attali.
Cool. I'm going to link all of these in the show notes page.
And then if we talk again, I'll come up with 5 more books.
Yeah, excellent. Do you have, I want to open it up basically at this point to give any closing remarks, any thoughts that we haven't covered, just things to leave people with. We've sufficiently freaked everyone out, I know that, but just anything you'd like to say.
Sure. All is not lost. I believe there's a way out. I also believe that this system is going to come with smart cities and the beast system, and there's going to be a substantial majority of the world that's going to enter into it, either through pure ignorance or through fear, because they don't understand the concept of liberty and freedom, and they don't know how to resist. So they will enter through fear and compliance. For those who want to live in a world where there is at least some semblance of liberty and freedom, find a solution locally. I have a 5-step solution where I can just quickly bring them up.
Sure.
Each of them requires hours of discussion, but number 1 is education. So educate yourselves and educate everybody around you, and educate yourself about what is happening, why is it happening, and most important, how it came to be. And the latter is the most important, and it requires a lot of studying.
Right.
You have to go back and understand your history as an American. Because most Americans, unfortunately, haven't studied deep enough, and they don't understand the treachery and lies that have been told to them right since the Constitution was formed. The second is undo your slavery status. Because as a US citizen, you are a 14th Amendment citizen. So go and study what the 14th Amendment citizen is. Understand that you have civil rights, not God-given rights. Right? The Declaration of Independence says crystal clear you have God-given rights. And if you had God-given rights, your duties are towards God. When you have civil rights from the 14th Amendment, your duties are to the government.
Yeah.
So you get immunities and privileges from the government as a 14th Amendment citizen, which can be given to you or taken away at whim. So you basically have property, you're a property of the federal government. So find a way to undo that slavery status. Number 3 is rethink fiat currencies, because we are currently in a debt slavery system and the US dollar is going to be crashed and it'll be on its knees in a few years, if not in a few quarters. So figure out a way to exchange value for value locally, whether you do it through gold, silver, dirty silver, or other methods. I can't tell you what's optimal for your neighborhood and your locale. Number 4, undo the smart cities, because the smart city infrastructure is about identity slavery through digital ID and your face. Right? So I've come to 4. And the 5th one is build local networks and a local society based on voluntary exchange. Because if you want to live free, you have to understand that freedom comes from within, not from without.
Yeah.
Right? And if you want to be virtuous, you want to live in a free society, in a free space. But freedom requires courage. Courage to think, courage to speak, and courage to act. So there is a way out, but you have to do your part. There's no hero coming to save you.
Yeah.
And we need numbers, and we need it locally.
Got it. All right, Aman, this has been really good. Thanks for coming on here. Thanks for coming on Counterflow.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one.
All right, last week we had our monthly Zoom call for those who wish to be $5 or more per month donors over at patreon.com/counterflow. It was a banger. We had Vin Armani, aka Ciprian, as our guest, and we went for several hours. There is no recording of this. People have asked about that. And I'm telling you guys, it will not be recorded. They will not be published. None of that. It's our own private little Zoom chat. There was a lot of Q&A back and forth with Ciprian. A lot of good stuff talking about the demonic nature of AI. So join that club, patreon.com/counterflow. $5 per month or more, get you in. And once a month, we'll do those Zoom calls. As for this show, counterflowpodcast.com. Follow me on Twitter @BuckRebel, BuckRebel. Subscribe to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, and you can watch all of these podcast episodes. Until next week, you guys have a good one. See ya.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.